Hi everyone, thank you so much for allowing me to join your meeting today. I'm really excited to be here. So today I'm just going to be talking about the research that I carried out while I was in Trinity College, which was looking at the mental well-being in siblings of individuals living with Prader-Willi syndrome. The project was carried out with the assistance of Dr. Louise Gallagher, who's a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry from Trinity College, Mr. Gary Brennan, who's the National Developmental Manager from the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, and Dr. Michael Byrne, who is a Principal Psychology Manager at the HSE. So before I go into detail about this research project that I carried out in Trinity, I want to provide an overview of the very first project that I carried out, which was before this one, while I was studying at Maynooth University. The reason I want to talk about this project first is because it actually laid the foundation for this current study. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to go into detail about the results of both of these studies and the experiences of siblings portrayed and what all of this actually means. So during my undergraduate degree, I carried out a study which looked at the experiences of having a sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome. This was carried out through focus group interviews. And the idea to carry out this project, it actually stemmed from identifying a gap in the literature of Prader-Willi syndrome and caregivers. I noticed there was very few studies completed in this area and even fewer looking at sibling experiences. So fortunately at the time, I was working with the HSE, which is the Health Service Executive in Ireland, who assisted me with approaching the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association Ireland, and I informed them of my research idea. So the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association Ireland were very happy to facilitate the research and help tremendously with the implementation of this project. So for example, they helped with the recruitment process, setting up a location for interviews and ensuring that everyone had a safe way to arrive at the interview location. So 7 siblings over the age of 18 kindly volunteered to participate in this group interview. And this is where we explored their personal experiences with their sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome. So what exactly did we learn from this project? So we identified 5 themes, adaptation being one. So this kind of explored siblings speaking about learning to adapt to a lifestyle that they knew was different to their social network, one that was different to what they considered to be normal. Positive traits were, again, this is extremely important to note as well. For example, participants spoke about the resilience and the patience that they had built over the years due to living with their sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome. So some of the other themes that were identified were negative emotions, sacrifices made, but the fundamental theme that was identified was the lack of supports available to them while they were growing up. So now I'm going to talk about the research project that we'd planned to discuss today. This is essentially an extension of the project that I just spoke about now, but rather than looking at experiences as a whole, we wanted to look at sibling well-being in detail. Also, rather than just using interviews, this time we also asked participants to fill out surveys that were related to their well-being, in addition to carrying out a one-to-one interview with myself. So this is just some of the literature review, which gave reason to carry out the current study. So it's been found that siblings of children with a developmental disability are at an increased risk of receiving a diagnosis of depression or other mental health conditions compared to siblings of children who do not have a developmental disability. Research that was carried out in Ireland found that caring for a person living with Prader-Willi syndrome was associated with a significant negative impact on family relationships, carer health, sibling mental health, and sibling social life. So what exactly were the research questions that we wanted to address before carrying out this study? So we had kind of developed a few questions that we aimed to address within the study. So we wanted to see, was there a relationship between decreased parental attention with anxiety and depression in siblings without Prader-Willi syndrome? We also wanted to see, was there a relationship between mental health in siblings living with Prader-Willi syndrome and mental health in siblings without Prader-Willi syndrome? We wanted to see, was there a relationship between the levels of stress in the home environment and mental health in siblings without Prader-Willi syndrome? And overall, we just wanted to gain a deeper insight into the well-being of siblings of individuals living with Prader-Willi syndrome through those interviews. So again, the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association in Ireland were fantastic in assisting with this project and recruited all of their participants for us. So 50 siblings were asked, 37 siblings completed the online survey, and 9 of these siblings further chose to take part in one-to-one interviews. So there was inclusion criteria to participate. Individuals must have had a sibling living with Prader-Willi syndrome, and the participants must have been over the age of 18. So this is just a visual on how the overall procedure of the project was carried out. Once consent was received from participants, the surveys and the interviews were completed. Once they were completed, the data analysis began and the results were obtained. And that's what I'm going to chat about now, is just the main results of the study. So when we're looking at the mental health of siblings with Prader-Willi syndrome, 32.4% were reported to have depression, 29.7% were reported to have anxiety, and 21.6% displayed aggressive behaviours. When we're looking at the mental well-being of siblings without Prader-Willi syndrome, 37.8% self-reported that they had experienced anxiety, 16.2% had experienced depression, 13.5% reported experience instability, emotional instability, and 10.8% had experienced low self-esteem. When asked about their current worries, 40.5% reported worries related to their sibling living with Prader-Willi syndrome's future, 29.7% were worried for their parents' future, and 21.6% were worried about the adverse home environment that had been created. So now we're just going to address the research questions that I had spoken about in the slides earlier and what was actually found within those relationships. So overall, 48.6% of participants reported that their mental health had been affected, which did have a causative relation to their sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome. Siblings who had experienced decreased parental attention were found to be significantly more likely to develop anxiety, however, not depression. Participants whose sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome engaged in self-injurious behaviours were more likely to have anxiety but not depression. And participants who grew up in a stressful home environment due to their sibling living with Prader-Willi syndrome were significantly more likely to develop anxiety, however, not depression. So just to note before I go into the results of the interviews, pseudonyms and numbers have been used to replace the names of the participants in this study. So 6 themes were identified from the interviews. These were impact on childhood, positive experiences, experiences with the outside world, impact on relationship with parents, mental health impact, and worry for siblings' future. I won't go into too much detail about the quotes that form the basis of these themes. However, I'll just read out a few of the quotes from some of the themes. So for example, in the theme of experiences with the outside world, participants two stated, "I wouldn't have gone out much. I kept to myself because everywhere you went, you had to explain why he looked so different." In the theme of worry for parent and sibling with Prader-Willi syndrome's future, participant 3 stated, "My parents are getting older and Jenny is more violent now. It's a huge worry for me." In the theme of positive experiences, which is incredibly important to note, I know I am predominantly talking about the well-being of siblings without Prader-Willi syndrome and the factors impacting, but it is really important to note that the positive experiences were highlighted by most of the participants. So participant 9 stated, "That relationship is very special. There's a lot of love, trust. It has a lot of heartwarming and positive associations for me." So I'm just going to go into detail about 2 of the themes, one of them being the impact on relationships with parents. I've just extracted 2 quotes from the data here that I would really like to share on the theme of impact on relationships. So participant 7 stated, "She had a massive impact. The relationship with your parents is perhaps the single most important one when you're growing up, but it was very one-dimensional. It was like, are you alive? Are you getting in trouble? Are you doing your homework? there was very little given back because they just didn't have the capacity. Participant 5 stated, the constant stress on everyone and then your parents' capacity, just often them not having any capacity for other things outside of joy. I think the biggest thing was they just weren't there. It got to the point where I kind of just decided in my head that they weren't people I could turn to, and joy had a big role to play in that because of their capacity. I felt angry a lot of the time when I was interacting with them. I often felt like I was fighting for attention. So on the theme of mental health, there are just some other quotes from siblings that I've extracted from the data that I wanted to share with you guys today. So participant 2 reported, of course he affected my mental health. It was mental turmoil, absolute mental turmoil. As he got bigger, you just couldn't handle him, and you didn't want to burden your parents with any more problems. If there was something going on, you try and sort things out yourself, get through whatever was going on without having to put more burden on your parents. Participant 5 stated, my mental health took a sharp turn at the end of primary school. The relationship with my parents, the impact there, that was disastrous on my mental health. I found myself very socially isolated, not having family I could perceive as a support system. The home environment was not conducive to recovering or getting well. I just continued to get worse, and I can happily say that a lot of that was Joy's presence and then other relationships. Participant 6 stated, I suffered from depression from when I was 15, 16 and peaked when I was 19. I saw a psychiatrist, would have had some therapy, and I would have been on and off medications for a couple of years. I felt that the home was an agitated place when I was feeling unwell. The only place to go was your room. The fact you didn't get to calm down and de-stress when you came home from school or work, the fact your parents were always tense, you didn't really unwind, which made it very difficult to recover from depression and my mental health. Okay, so I guess I've kind of just spoke to you about the overview of the project and the results from the surveys and the interviews. So what does all of this actually mean? So what was found? So with the research from my study, it showed that siblings of individuals living with Prader-Willi syndrome are significantly more likely to develop anxiety. 5 of the participants spoke about the amazing support that they have received from their family. However, 4 siblings were predominantly left in the dark and felt extremely alone throughout their childhood with no one to turn to. It's important to note that all siblings within this study highlighted that receiving more support would have been extremely helpful for them. So I have just kind of left some supports that are available for siblings of individuals living with Prader-Willi syndrome. Research has shown that debriefing can be extremely effective after a stressful event. It's beneficial to sit down together as a family without the child living with Prader-Willi syndrome and to talk and to elaborate on what has just happened. There's also parent-to-parent SIB shops and SIB camps that may be in your area. There's also Facebook pages as well. One of the participants that I interviewed had an amazing Facebook page set up as well, and it's absolutely fantastic. There's many of them out there. There's online resources also. So there's My Sibling Has a Disability. Sometimes I get anxious. Sibling Needs Throughout Life. These are all really good resources as well, and they are available online. There's also the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association Ireland weekend, which happens every year. This is in Ireland, and they pick a county every year, and families come together and they talk about their experiences, and it's a really beautiful setup as well. So that's everything that I have to share on my research project. Please feel free to ask me any questions, as I do speak quite fast and my accent might be a little difficult to understand. Or if questions do arise later on, please feel free to email me at the email address below there. Thank you.